Hey everybody, getting back to our book Trilateralism, about the Trilateral Commission, another secret society, a world denomination for the New World Order. This is still the overview, managing third world dependence, revitalizing imperialism. Trilateralists have always known that issues related to economics are a heart of modern politics, and they are determined to consolidate a world economy. There it is, this book from 1980, in which all natural economies beat to the rhythm of transnational corporate capitalism, all hearts leaping at the sight of corporate products and all minds thinking in the language of technocrats. Oh my God. Trilateral elites hope to guarantee a stable supply of raw materials, cheap labor, and an expanding marketplace for global corporations by stripping the bonds which keep third world development or underdevelopment, defined by and dependent upon the expansion of leading capitalist economies. In the film Controlling Interest, I gotta watch this. George Ball explains in an interview that government helps business by keeping economy free of obstructions. I'm gonna have to watch that. The third world calls for new international economic order to readdress structural inequalities and protect national economic and political sovereignty. The commission is attempting to substitute a renovated international economic system that's coming because we're going to digital. 1980 now, renovated by and for Trilateral Incorporated. Christopher Makins, deputy director of the commission, calls this gradualist or reformist approach conservation and the whirlpool of revolution. He cautions those who advocate profound economic, social, and political changes to extreme measures have a self-defeating effect by threatening to throttle the goose which can lay the golden eggs of growth. The trilateral goal is to reorient efforts to redistribute global resources into a promotion of so-called new order for mutual gain, a concept elaborated by Richard Cooper, Undersecretary of State for Economic Affairs. This would be nothing more than an old order for trilateral gain, mainly thinly disguised by few flourishes of affirmative action for third world elites and whatever trickle-down efforts an expanding world economy could afford. As always, the rich in the rich and poor countries will get richer at the expense of the poor in all countries. Largely in response to OPEC's early success, trilateral economist Fred Bernstein, Carter's Assistant Secretary of Treasury, illustrated the implementations of third world leverage over ingenious resources. He recommended the United States respond to this threat from the third world not to continue confrontation and hostility, but within a framework of generally cooperative relations. The West had first attempted to split OPEC solidarity without success. In 1979, Tom Former, serving as special assistant to the Secretary of State, explained how a strategy for accommodation is analogous to the strategy used to diffuse class conflict in industrialized West in the early 20th century. In the years of bitter class conflict between capital and labor, before the compromises of the welfare state, many advocates of a hard line against the demands of labor invoked the alleged instability of those demands in support of confrontational strategy. Nothing is better calculated to promote miscalculation than the pretense that the equilibrium of power has not shifted, that we can continue to dictate to the third world on the terms suffice in the epoch of Western imperium. Looking to the lessons of the past and faced with a volatile future, trilateralists seek new terms upon which to dictate to the third world. In discussing attitudes behind the rise of a modern welfare state, the terms upon which capital continues to dictate to labor, commissioners observe that they are rooted in ethical, philosophical values of the West, as well as enlightened self-interest, since a millennium of social justice and reform will be necessary for stability in the long run. According, commissioners describe the major tasks of their strategy for the management of interdependence as keeping the peace, managing the world economy, satisfying the basic human needs, protecting human rights regarding basic human needs. The commissioner wrote that alleviation of poverty is a demand of the basic principles of the West, as well as simple self-interest. In the long run, an orderly world is unlikely if great affluence in one part coexists with abject poverty in another, while one world of communication, of mutual concern, and interdependence comes into being. The regimes of countries within which the Trilateral Commission calls international middle-class countries or new influentials are to be co-opted with increased role and stake in international management and split from the ranks of third world countries. If this trilateral scheme of divide and rule, the poorest countries are to be pacified with a basic human needs approach. Symbolic minimum welfare programs would be administered throughout Western dominated agencies such as the World Bank in accordance with a World Development Budget. Wow, keep you in poverty. Needless to say, the terms of development would be dictated along lines which serve the global corporation in promoting an orderly world economy. Corporate control economic growth operates according to the law of unseen development, the tendency of a system to produce poverty as well as wealth, underdevelopment as well as development. The gap between rich and poor countries widens. Workers and peasants grow increasingly impoverished as national income rises and narrow strata at the top is enriched. Commissioners themselves admit meeting basic human needs is not necessarily the same as fostering economic development. You can't make this up. A great deal of our past thinking on economic development has failed to put human beings in the center of transitional strategies and rising per capita GNP figures. Many will obscure increasingly misery within the state in question. Nonetheless, they promise more of the same, declaring countries that want economic development would be well advised to welcome foreign firms on appropriate terms. Wow. In discussing the goal of eliminating poverty, trilateralists conclude we do not have the human resources to eliminate poverty within the immediate foreseeable future, but we can contribute toward that end over a longer period of time. What they mean is that without steps to redistribute existing wealth and to reallocate the means of producing wealth, poverty and hunger are here to stay. Yes, it is. The Bible says the poor will always be among you. Trilateralists correctly note that for the weaker developing countries, interdependence appears as a system of dependence, as they see in their entire economy and external trade have been shaped according to priorities defined by stronger industrialized states and not by their own needs. They fear that the idea of greater self-reliance, which is in fact an indispensable goal of development, could degenerate into a rejection of an integrated world economy. In 1975, Beninsky, who groomed Obama, today we find international scene dominated on its overt plane more by conflict between the advanced world and the developing world than by conflict between trilateral democracies and communist states. The new aspirations of the third and fourth worlds united together seems to me to pose a very major threat to the nature of the international system and ultimately to our own societies. That threat is the threat of denial of cooperation. You can't make this up. I got to go back. Let me get back in. Oh, shoot. Let me make sure I'm in. Okay, I'm in. All right. Okay. How do trilateral powers keep third world states cooperative? In the wake of World War II, old-style colonialism gave way to neo-colonialism. The neo-colonial state was former political independence, but in reality, its economic system and thus its political policy is directed from outside. Instead of single colonial master, the neo-colonial state may have new masters. Western governments, the International Monetary Fund funded by the Rothschilds, banking consortiums, global corporations, Western powers have intervened repeatedly to sabotage and smash governments which challenged the tightly woven fabric of dependency. Iran, 1953. How about Iran, 2025? Guatemala, 1954. The Congo, now Zaire, 1960. Brazil, 1964. Dominican Republic, Indonesia, 1965. Bolivia, 1970-71. Chile, 1973. The 1961 Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba, orchestrated by the CIA and top government military officials with President Kennedy's approval, was defeated. All facts. Debt dependency is one of the neo-colonial leashes around the third world countries that they loan you all this money knowing that you can't pay it back. But my man Ibrahim, he paid back $4 trillion. That's why Russia was so smart in just, he told Africa, you don't even have to pay me back. He got rid of $20 billion debt for them. And now they're his allies. Now he got all natural resources. Let me tell you, Putin was smart. The leash is let out to allow Western-directed development projects to gallop ahead, returning enormous profits to foreign corporations and banks. The debt lease can be pulled in tight as part of an economic, political destabilization campaign to strangle a rebellious nation into submission. That's what they've been doing. Destabilization is the dominant system's cure for any government which threatens the economic freedom of international business as it becomes more responsive to the needs of its people. And the global doctors know just how painful their cure can be. It kills the body to save the cancer. The overthrow of Chile's democracy-elected government is a case in point. Oh my God. I'm going to let that stop right here, and then we're going to get into the Chilean government. That's what we about to do. I thought that was so good. Oh my God, now everybody